Hi, I'm here to talk about the case of Shelby's sweetheart, Asha Degree. She was born on August 5th, 1990, and went missing on February 14th, 2000, making her just 9 years old at the time she disappeared. She vanished from Shelby, North Carolina, where she lived with her family. This case feels super personal to me. One of those things, if you really know my personal life, you would know. Like, if you know, you know why. But even so, it's something that should continue to get attention, because the more people that see her face and picture and hear her name, the more likely it is that someone who saw her or knows what happened to her or where she is will come forward. Because to this day, the case is unsolved. For 22 years, this case has been unsolved. This is such a bizarre case. It's one of the cases that the more I read about it, the more facts I found out, the more questions I had. And every possible answer I came up with just came with more questions and more questions. So I'm sorry that there's no resolution at all here. All I have is more questions, but it felt important to share. There is no one theory that seems to fit here, so it's frustrating, one for sure. And like I said, it's still unsolved. We have no idea to this day what exactly happened to Asha Degree and if she is still alive or not. She may very well be out there somewhere. So here's a little background that I was able to find about Asha. Weirdly enough, her parents, Harold and Aquila, were married on Valentine's Day in 1988 and had a son, O'Brien, in 1989, and then Asha was born in 1990. So they were a year apart. They raised their children in Shelby, North Carolina, which is a fairly rural area. The kids were reportedly latchkey kids a lot of the time, which seems to have been pretty common at the time. After school, they would let themselves in and start on their homework while their parents were still at work. So they had their keys, they could go in, start their homework. Now, one thing that really stands out amidst some of the theories on the internet is that the family were really conscious and careful of outside influences on their children and what they were exposed to. They were very concerned about this, to the point where the family did not have a computer in the house. They had no access to the internet. Their mom is quoted having referred to a fear of pedophiles and the influences from the internet as one of the reasons they wanted to keep their children away from it, which is totally reasonable. I totally get that. Asha and her brother had their lives focused around family, church, and school. Aquila said that personality-wise, Asha was shy and cautious and seemed totally okay with the limits that her parents had set for her. She was also reported to be absolutely terrified of dogs, and this kind of factors into the case here. Asha loved sports. She was really into sports, especially basketball, and she played on the basketball team. On February 12th, so 2 days before she disappeared, her basketball team lost its first game of the season. Asha was the star point guard of the team and had fouled out. So point guards are a team member, one of the positions who run the offense for the team by controlling the ball and making sure it gets to the right player at the right time. I honestly really have no idea what a foul is in basketball. I'm completely lost when it comes to most sports. But either way, it sounds like a mistake that she made. According to her parents, Asha was upset about this loss and was crying about it afterwards, along with other members of the team. But it seemed to them that she'd gotten over it not too long afterward, and she watched her brother's game after her game had ended. She was smiling and joking around again. Then on February 12th, Asha went to a slumber party at her aunt's house with a bunch of other relatives. So I think her 15-year-old cousin was hosting it, and there was other relatives there. She stayed up late dancing and playing with her cousins. I couldn't really find any information on if there was any internet access or things like that through the aunt or the other cousins. I don't know if that is even relevant here, but I figured I'd mention it. So that takes us to February 13th, a Sunday. The children went to church and then to a relative's house and then back home. At the relative's house, Asha's grandmother gave her a bag of candy for Valentine's Day. I think it was her favorite candy. Asha and O'Brien shared a room, and they went to bed around 8 p.m., according to most reports. But what's confusing here is different papers report different things, making this timeline super murky and confusing to figure out. According to that timeline, a lot of things don't make sense, which I'll go into in a little bit. So some people said Harold worked second shift and got home late, and some said that Asha was on the couch until about midnight, and some say that Harold left around 11:30 to go pick up some candy for Valentine's Day. About an hour later, the electricity went out in the neighborhood caused by a nearby car accident. The time of the power going out also varies a bit according to different newspaper reports. Some of them say that it went around 6:30 or 7 instead of 9. And this is important to me, and I'll tell you why in a bit. So the power came back on around 12:30, and Harold went in and checked in on his children and saw that they were both sleeping in their beds, which if Asha had gone to bed at midnight off the couch, yeah, she easily could have been sleeping in her bed, because if I fall asleep on the couch, I will definitely go and fall right back asleep in my bed. So then he checked on them again right before he went to bed around 2:30 a.m. on February 14th, and again said they were both in their rooms, in their beds, asleep. Now, not long after that, 10-year-old O'Brien said he heard Asha's bed squeaking and thought she was going to the bathroom or turning around in bed, but she apparently got up, took a previously packed book bag that contained several sets of clothes and other personal items, and left the house. Right, around 3 in the morning, this 9-year-old child just got up and left in the middle of the night. Why she had this bag packed or for how long it had been packed is unknown. We don't know that. Asha then left the house in the middle of the night alone and walked down the street. Somewhere between 3:45 and 4:15, a truck driver saw her walking down the road wearing a white long-sleeve t-shirt and white or light-colored pants just north of the Highway 18 junction with Highway 180. The driver didn't do anything at the time, but later reported this to the police when he saw a news report about her disappearance. Around the same time frame, another motorist said that he had turned his car around when he saw her because he thought it was so odd to see a child out by herself at that time of night. He circled 3 times, and then he saw her run into the woods by the side of the road and disappear. He also said that there was a storm raging at the time he saw her. With how cautious her parents were, honestly, it would be really creepy and terrifying to see someone circling around you. I would be absolutely terrified if I was walking alone in the middle of the night and someone kept circling their car around me. That gives me chills just even thinking of it. It's so creepy. Why would you do that to someone? In a storm, in the dark, it would likely be impossible to see who was in the car, and even so, stranger danger has to kick in at that point, which I think would explain why she would run away from him and run into the woods if he was circling around her. But why was she out there in the first place? She wasn't dressed for the weather at all, according to what the witnesses have said, and had to have been cold and soaked. Police believe that based on the matching description and similar time and direction she was headed, these are both considered legitimate sightings of Asha Degree. So then, at 5:45 that morning, Asha's mom went to get the children up and ready for school. So it was Valentine's Day, it was Asha's parents' wedding anniversary, so it was a really important day for the family. They were supposed to have taken a bath the night before, before they went to bed, and they were supposed to take it in the morning now because the power outage had prevented them from taking one the night before. This is where the popularly reported timeline doesn't make any sense, because if the power went out an hour after they went to bed, why couldn't they have taken a bath the night before? So if it went out earlier, that makes a lot more sense to me. If it went out at 6:30 or 7, then it makes sense that they were supposed to take a bath right before they went to bed and couldn't. So I'm really curious as to what the actual time frame on that is. When Aquila opened the door, she saw O'Brien in his bed, but Asha was not there, and they couldn't find her anywhere. They looked in the house and in their cars, and she wasn't there. Since her grandmother or other relative lived across the street, they checked there as well and found no sign of Asha. They called the police to report her missing, and from there the search was on for the missing girl. Police arrived on the scene by 6:40 a.m. and had police dogs with them to pick up Asha's scent. Her parents walked through the neighborhood calling for her. Friends, neighbors, and family all joined in the search, desperate to find this beloved child. In the search, they found nothing that day but a mitten, but it wasn't even Asha's. And this became important because they noted that no winter clothing had been taken from the house, which is especially strange considering the weather the night before when Asha left. Because this disappearance was covered on the news, the truck driver and motorist alerted police of when and where they had seen Asha walking, which provided the first leads in the case. Then, on February 15th, some candy wrappers were found in a shed at a local business along the highway close to where Asha was reported to have run into the woods. These were the candy wrappers, I believe, from the candy her grandmother had given her. Along with the candy wrappers was a pencil, a marker, and a hair bow. And this hair bow has been both described as either a Mickey Mouse hair bow or a yellow hair bow with a teddy bear on it. So I'm not sure which description is actually correct. But they were identified, like these belongings were identified as having belonged to Asha. There was also a photograph of another little girl that was found there who was around Asha's age and still hasn't been identified. And I'm assuming Asha had this with her, but that isn't 100% for sure because she hasn't been identified, as nobody recognizes who this was. Nobody knows for sure that this was one of Asha's belongings, and we don't know that it was not already in the shed, although this seems super unlikely given that there was also belongings from Asha there. The photo was not recognized by anyone in Asha's school or in her community, but if anybody out there has any idea on who this little girl might be, please report it. I also don't know why she would have left these belongings behind if she brought them, like the candy wrappers, sure. But why would she have left her pencil and her marker and her bow? I'm thinking maybe it was so dark in the shed and they fell out of her backpack in the search for candy and she didn't even realize it or something like that. Here is some of the route that she was seen walking down the night of her disappearance.
So this here is Oakcrest Drive. This is the road that Asha Degree lived on. She left here around 3 in the morning and walked up this road, 18 right here. Now, this is daytime, obviously, so it looks a little different, and it's also, this was in 2000, and this is, I believe, let me check the year. This is 2018 when this Google was taken. So it's probably a lot more developed than it was. Well, maybe not a lot, but somewhat different. I checked the older ones and they're really grainy. So there was one from like 2007, I think, or something. And 2008. And as you can see, it's really bad quality. It's really grainy and you can't see much. So while this might be slightly more accurate to what it looked like then, I'm going to actually go back to the more modern one just so we can get a better view. And it looks pretty much the same from this view. So Asha walked up this road. As you can see, it's pretty flat. It's pretty even. The road's clear, but I don't see streetlights or anything here. So she wouldn't have really been able to see anything, one would presume. Also, it was a terrible storm, and I cannot picture in my head what would make someone go outside in this kind of storm. That just blows my mind. So as we travel up here a little bit, people have commented that they don't understand how she was only spotted by 2 people on this road during the time when she was walking. They were like, it's a highway. How is she not seen by more people? Well, I'm not an expert, but from what I'm looking at, yes, it's a highway, but it doesn't look well traveled. This is presumably middle of the day. And I see 2 cars in sight. Okay, 3 down there. There's some cars. but there's not a whole lot of traffic. And having spent a lot of time out in the country, even on highways, you don't see a lot of traffic in the middle of the night. You just don't. You can walk a long time without seeing anyone. So I don't think it's that unreasonable that she would only have been seen by 2 people while she was walking on this road. So that theory to me, like, when people are speculating that, it doesn't seem that odd. Now I'm looking here for ditches, something. This road's pretty flat, not a lot of ditches. And fields, there's fences. Again, no lights from what I can see. Although I can't imagine wanting to walk down this in a storm. Awful. But we're going to travel a little bit down the road the way she was walking. And she was, I guess, walking to... They speculate that she was walking in the direction of her elementary school, which is a few miles up the road this way. I feel like I'm invading people's privacies here. There's a billboard. But these are not, like, when you say there's a billboard, often you picture these big, like, freeways that have giant billboards. This is a small billboard. They are not getting a ton of traffic in these places. They're just not. There's some trucks coming through. You can see it's obviously a road that's being used for trucks. But it's a small area. You can tell this is not a large town. It's not a city. There isn't much going on here. And again, I'm looking for anything noteworthy here. There's no big drop-offs. I mean, you can see down there, it goes down a little bit, but not significantly. But again, this girl was 9 years old. And to me, it's a little scary walking down a road. Even now, when you're walking down a highway and there's no sidewalks, there's nowhere really to walk except the road and the grass or ditch. So that seems a little dangerous to me, especially at night. You would hope that everyone has their lights on, but what doesn't make sense to me is that there's, like a 9-year-old leaving her house in 3 in the morning and walking down this road by herself. But I wanted to pull out my handy Quest 2. This is the Wander app, and honestly, I use it all the time to check things out because I love being able to kind of look in 3D. I know it sort of has a loading time. It can be a little off-putting, but I thought this would be a little bit more immersive to give us an idea of the path that she traveled and where she went. There's another little billboard. And I'm looking for, I might have to search it up, the upholstery store. So there was an upholstery store, and she went in a shed in the backyard that was behind the upholstery store. And they know that because items of hers were found there, like candy wrappers. So this is a child's mind. This is not some well-conceived plan. This is a child, bringing, oh, I need food for my trip. I'm going to bring candy. Like, okay, there are some adults that would do that, but I think most people, if they were packing food for a journey, would pack something other than candy. But she's like, oh yeah, I'm just going to grab this candy. Like, to me, that doesn't seem well thought out or like a big plan that she came up with. And so it's really confusing to me that The whole thing is so confusing to me, though, quite honestly. Oh, what's this kind of cute store? But I'm going to check out these buildings on the side up here, and then I'm going to do a search and take us to the upholstery store. Where they guess it was about a 20-minute walk between Aisha's house and the upholstery store. I don't know, in a storm or how far up the road it was. I'm going to have to look. But I don't assume that a 9-year-old would be walking that fast in a storm, for one thing. It's kind of weird walking up the middle of the road on the wrong side, even though obviously I'm not in a car, but it just feels weird. Okay, so we're coming up on some more buildings here. And I'm looking here and like there's fields, there's lines of trees, there's not very many houses out here. It's pretty plain. And for all I know, I could have already passed it, to be honest. Organize. Okay, let me do a search. Okay, so we were just here by Bargain Buys. So we would still have to travel quite a bit up this road to get to the Debbie Turner Upholstery, which is where we are now. Okay, there's the sign for Debbie Turner Upholstery. So it was up here and somewhere way back in here. So where, like, she would have had to travel either up this drive or cutting through here and somewhere way up in a shed back there. And I can't travel there, obviously, in this app. This is using Google Street View, I believe. So maybe that shed, but I'm not totally sure. I can't get a good view from here. But as you can see, it's daytime and there's not that many cars coming through here. And I'm not going to go the whole road that she traveled. But again, no street lights. I don't know how she even found that shed in the dark. That's kind of incredible to me, but that was where she stopped and where some of her things were found.
All right, so as you've seen a little bit of the area of Shelby and kind of got a feel for the area, then on February 16th, Aisha's mom realized that Aisha's favorite clothing was also missing from her room, including a pair of blue jeans with a red stripe on them. After a week, the search was called off after 9,000 man-hours had been invested in searching a 2 to 3 mile radius from where she had last been seen. Posters were plastered all over the area, resulting in about 300 leads and tips from possible sightings to ideas of abandoned houses and wells where Aisha may have ended up. The FBI got involved and added Aisha to their database of missing children, and they are investigating every lead they get. I also read that classmates of hers mentioned that at some point before she disappeared, Aisha had shown them some money she had. I don't know exactly how factual this is, how much money she had, or if this is related to the case at all. So if she was planning to run away, was she saving up money? And if so, and she was being like quiet about it, why did she show her classmates? Except that, kids that age do that kind of stuff. I'm just really curious of where the money came from and if that's true and if it's even related. This case is really strange for several reasons. For one, most runaways are a minimum of 12 years old, and Aisha was only 9 years old at the time she left. Based on the items she took and the preparation, it is thought that she planned this for several days at least before she actually left. She must have had a set date, like I'm thinking in my mind, she must have set this date in advance and planned it. Otherwise, why would she have left in such horrendous weather? Like, who would just decide on a whim that night that you need to leave in the middle of a bad storm? I also can't imagine what would prompt her to do so, especially with her fear of dogs. Like if she was so scared of dogs, leaving in the middle of the night like that in a storm just sounds overwhelmingly terrifying to me. I would not want to do that. The FBI have not come up with any strong lead of what would have made her leave, or at least they haven't released it. If they do, they didn't find any typical issues which they said might prompt running away, such as family dysfunction or trouble in school. However, they still think that her being a runaway was the most likely explanation for her leaving the house that night. But they also agree, I think, that 9-year-olds could not have disappeared for so long without help. So no 9-year-old could have just vanished for 22 years with no trace without either running into someone and something bad happening to her, or having had some help in getting away and concealing her identity for so long. They also think that despite her choosing to leave, she either got off track or was maybe abducted once she left. The internet is rife with theories and ideas, but none of them is a perfect explanation for why Asha left and what happened to her. Just desperate for answers, Asha's family started doing TV appearances a month after she disappeared to gain national attention for the case. They appeared on the Montel Williams Show, America's Most Wanted, and the Oprah Winfrey Show also did segments on the case. And this is where it gets even weirder. On August 3rd, 2001, about a year and a half after she initially vanished, Asha's book bag and some other items were found during a construction project off Highway 18 where she was traveling near Morganton, which is about 26 miles north of Shelby, the town where Asha lived. So she was on foot. 26 miles north is where her book bag was found. Now, even weirder, the book bag was wrapped in not one, but 2 plastic bags, which really helped to preserve it. So it almost seems like someone intentionally tried to preserve it or wanted to keep it or wanted it to be found in some way. I'm not sure, but, it wasn't burned. It wasn't thrown in a dumpster. It wasn't destroyed by the element. This was perfectly preserved in 2 trash bags. According to the worker who found the bag, the backpack contained Asha's name and phone number. The FBI took it for testing, but at the time, they haven't shared any results publicly to this date. However, on the 20th anniversary of her disappearance, the FBI did confirm that the backpack contained a copy of Dr. Seuss's McElligot's Pool, and a shirt from the band New Kids on the Block. But strangely, neither of these items seemed to have belonged to Asha before she disappeared, and the book was actually from the library at Asha's elementary school. So at least in my school, they recorded who checked out books, so I have always been curious if this book was checked out to someone other than Asha, or if they have those records, or if it was just taken from the library. I have no other information on this. I couldn't find any specific information at all. So of course the FBI would love to hear from anyone who has any information about these items or who they may have come from or belong to. All other leads since then appear to have been dead ends. But what is most fascinating to me in this case is that this has never been declared a cold case. So a case is declared or considered a cold case where there are no leads to investigate and all leads have led nowhere. The FBI is adamant that this case is not yet gone cold even after so long, and they especially want to find information related to the book and shirt found in the backpack that they say is essential to finding out what happened to Asha. This just gives me chills thinking about the whole situation, leaving in a storm, leaving in the middle of the night, and just vanishing. And these, the strange picture, the strange items in her bag. It's so confusing. And a 9-year-old girl, that just blows my mind. She was 9 years old. So the Degree family established a scholarship in Asha's name in 2008, and they award a local deserving student and host an annual walk to raise awareness and money that they use to fund their continued search. The walk starts at their home and ends at the missing persons billboard for Asha along Highway 11 where she was last seen. The FBI also released an age-progressed photo of Asha in case she's still alive and can be found even now as an adult. The FBI has also offered a reward of $25,000 for information leading to the arrest and conviction of a person or persons who are responsible for her disappearance, and a community group is offering another $20,000 on top of that. So there is a total of $45,000 in rewards. In May of 2016, the FBI announced that it may have a new lead, as it was possible that Asha was seen getting into a dark green early 1970s Lincoln Continental Mark IV or a Ford Thunderbird with rust around its wheel wells along Route 18 where she was last seen. In 2017, the FBI announced that its Child Abduction Rapid Deployment Team was in the area to provide on-the-ground assistance and to support them to find out what happened to Asha. Since that time, the team has conducted at least 300 interviews. An inmate in 2020 claimed to know that Asha was murdered and that he knew where to find her, but in 2021, the local sheriff said that this claim led to another dead end. Asha's mother believes that her daughter is still out there somewhere, alive, and that someone has answers as to where she is and how she disappeared. This is so heartbreaking. I really can't imagine anything worse than spending over 20 years searching for your lost child. So, please, if you have any information at all about Asha Degree, call and report it. This includes if you've heard anything about her, were a witness when she was walking down Highway 18, or have any information about the book or shirt, or if you know anything about the green car she may have gotten into, if anyone's ever mentioned these things to you, like just anything that you may have that can help put this case to rest, because this one really sits with me and I would love to see it solved. Thank you for joining me today, and have a good night.